Welcome to Two Couples Coaches podcast, where certified relational life coaches Bev and Suzette guide you through the highs, lows, and in-betweens of love and relationships. Trained by Terry Real and the Relational Life Institute, Bev and Suzette help couples and individuals create deeper connections. Whether you are in a relationship that spans many years, navigating a new relationship, or simply seeking better ways to communicate, this podcast is your weekly roadmap to love, deeper connection, and relational growth. So now, please welcome the hosts of Two Couples Coaches, Bev and Suzette.
Hi, everybody. I'm
Hi.
Bev,
And I'm Suzette.
and we are so excited to welcome you to the very first episode of Two Couples Coaches. Wow, Suzette, we've worked a while to get here, and here we are.
It's an exciting day. This is
It's
fun.
very, very exciting. So we'll just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. So it's our first show, as we said, and we just want to introduce ourselves and share a bit about why we're doing this podcast and about the work that we do. We're both certified relational life therapy coaches trained by Terry Real himself and the Relational Life Institute. While I'm not new to coaching, I now work almost exclusively with the RLT method, which is powerful. It's direct and it is a deeply effective approach that differs quite a bit from traditional couples and individual work. But we'll be diving into all of that in future episodes. So I'll just dive in with a little bit about me. I was born in South Africa, where I met and married my husband, Adrian. After a year, we moved to Israel, where we've currently been living for almost 40 years. We have 4 kids and a growing crew of adorable grandchildren who keep us joyfully on our toes. When I'm not in a deep conversation or a coaching session, you can find me on a tennis court or in the pool or my new latest obsession, pickleball. Yeah, I know. It was kind of just for the seniors, but I guess I'm there now and I love it. Anyway, Suzette, I was telling you the other day about one of my tennis partners that I was saying to her that I used to kind of behave in relationships like I sometimes play tennis, which can be a little bit aggressive, even strong, I'd say, trying to get the ball into the right box and never mind what was going on the other side of the net. And that lack of intentionality or excess force, I would say, showed up a lot in my relationships too. It was kind of like I was playing tennis without thinking that there was a partner on the other side. And that was my experience sometimes that in my relationship, well, clearly all the problems are only my husband's. Of course, I'm the perfect partner to be living with. So, our relational recovery, if you like, journey, my husband and mine, started quite a few years ago when Adrian was recovering from an illness. And as he was recovering, I said, you know what, I think we need to do some work on repairing and getting back together again. And I would say, of course, I'm in the industry, right? So I'll find us the perfect therapist. And we would go, therapist, coach, and I would always give us the presenting problem is that he is the problem. If you could just fix him, we would, of course, be golden. Until one delightful therapist said to me, you could come down a little bit from your grandiosity and be a bit kinder. And I was like, sorry, say that again. And it was the most refreshing thing that anyone had actually ever said to me. She kind of took me on and made me feel that, oh, I have a part in this relationship too. And that realization was so powerful for us. We did some of relational life therapy courses together. Adrian's a physician, so he uses this with his patients and clients as well. I decided, though, this is really a journey that I wanted to take all the way to certification and help other couples manage and get to where we were able to get to. Now, not that we're perfect, but it's so lovely to be able to kind of course correct ourselves when we do feel the disconnect, to remember that we're not each other's enemy. We actually want to come back into connection. And that is what I love about working with couples. They come into session, and I'm interested if this is your experience too, Suzette. They come into to session so often hopeless, but yet they want to try again. And they might have been through many therapies, but they feel there's something to their coupling that they want to preserve and try and improve. And really, after one session, I would say almost 100%, I've not had a couple who've left saying, wow, we feel equally hopeless than we did when we came in. And that's Terry Reel's work. It's about the hope. It's about the fact that you have agency in your relationship. It didn't just land on you. You have a part to play and you can make it what you want. So that's kind of a long little bit about me. What about you, Suzette?
Well, let me just say, I love your tennis example because isn't that so true? Like we do our relationships like we do other things in our lives, either just with a lot of force and control or a lot of worry and fear or a lot of just kind of letting it happen and not intentionality. So I really like that. So a little bit about me. I also, like Bev, am certified couples coach in the relational life model. I live in Colorado with my husband and my 4 kids, and my kids range from ages 10 to 16. So I'm kind of in the midst of just a lot of parenting and parent life right now. We live in a really small little mountain town, and so our favorite things to do are in the mountains: skiing, hiking, camping. My kids are into mountain biking, which means I had to get into mountain biking. So just we like to be outdoors. I just am trying to keep up with my kids and all their outdoor activities as long as I can. And my trajectory to working with couples and working in the field of relationships has kind of been a little bit unusual. I actually got my undergraduate degree in international politics. I was really drawn into thinking about how countries get along and how the world kind of fractures and then unites in different ways, and wars and treaties. I just found all of that so interesting. And then when I graduated, I kind of shifted to being more interested in how people get along. And so I got my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And it's really not that different than international politics, right? We're making treaties, we're trying to align parties that have conflicting interests and conflicting values. There's actually so much similarities between the two fields. And then I raised my kids for a while, and then I kind of got back into the field of working with couples, and I sought out training just to help me better understand this couples dynamic, because relationships are hard. And so I trained at the Gottman Institute and the Couples Institute and the Relationship School, all these different places to really understand kind of couples dynamics. And then I found the work of Terry Real, which is just another kind of method of couples work. And I really gravitated towards that. I loved that. It was very helpful to me personally and professionally. And so that's kind of where a lot of my energy in working with couples is focused. So that's a little bit about me. I was thinking just the other day, I love working with couples, and if I could do something different, it would either be teaching, which is exciting because we get to kind of do some education in this podcast. But my other dream job would be to like work, going and doing treaties between countries, trying to negotiate deals, because my specialty is working with couples who are navigating differences, trying to find ways to compromise, trying to find ways to feel connected when they're like, oh, we are so different, whether it's religious differences, political differences, parenting style differences. That's like my jam. I love working in this space of connection, even though we're different people. And so I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that
I
on
think
this.
you and I could do some really different things together. Number one, we could maybe do work in the mountains or on a tennis court, because clearly we both like we like that kind of sporting activity. And you talk about treaties between countries. I always say I might not be able to bring peace to the Middle East, but now that I've met you, maybe we can. But I can try and bring peace to people's bedrooms, their living rooms, one couple at a time. So that's my dream. And I didn't realize before this conversation how aligned our dreams actually were in bringing our little bit of peace.
Yeah.
Because what we see individually, you're so right, we see at a collective level as well. And do you work mainly now with the with RLT?
Yeah, that's kind of main, but I do like to pull in a lot of there's so much great relationship information and tools out there. But yeah, mainly I do work with RLT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well,
And individuals and couples.
I mostly work with couples. We didn't talk about that. So yeah, I have a private coaching business. I do everything virtual, but I work mostly with couples or individuals who want to work on their part of their relationship dynamic. So I
Right,
work with
definitely.
individuals on their relationship issues. What about you?
Part of the seesaw. Yeah, mainly couples, but I do work with individuals, and we'll talk about what happens when one partner wants to bring the other one in and they don't want to. We're going to just jump out for a break, and we'll be back in 1 minute.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
All right, Bev, so let's talk about how we met, since we live in opposite sides of the world, and why we are doing this podcast, how this came to be.
So we met in a small group while we were studying for our certification. Part of the work we had to do was in a small group presenting our work with clients. And as is my usual way of behavior, when I'm put in a small group, I will reach out to everybody to kind of get to know them a little bit more. So I reached out to you, Suzette, and said, hey, do you want to have a virtual coffee with me? And you straight away said, yeah. I said, I'd love to get you to know you a bit more. And by the end of that conversation, it was clear that we could maybe collaborate on something. And you were like, yeah, that would be fun. So we actually started off creating little video clips, which you can see on YouTube. All of that will be in our show notes, about the work that we were doing. And from that, Bold Brave TV seemed to find that was lacking for them in a podcast. They wanted something about relationships, and they reached out to me. So would I be interested in doing a podcast with them? And that's when I said to you, hey, you want to up our game? And you were like, yeah, sure. So it's going to be a little bit more work than we've been doing. And I'm 100% on board. And that's been wonderful. It's been wonderful to work with you and organize this. And it's another form of relationship, right?
And that's one of the things that drew me to you, Bev, was just the fact that you do come from a whole different culture than me, and you do live in a completely different part of the world. And so I always find our discussions fascinating because there's differences and different perspectives. And so so I think this will be really fun to just bring our different perspectives together as we talk about relationships in this podcast. So let's talk about what this podcast is going to be about. What we want to do with our podcast.
You want to jump in?
Yeah,
Who's the
who's
podcast?
this podcast for, Bev? Tell me who.
Okay. So we're aiming really at couples in long-term relationships, whether you've been together for 5 years or 50. Relationships always evolve over time, and that seems to come as a surprise to many couples. Like, we didn't contract on this when we first got married, and now one person wants to be more religious, more political, into travel, and I'm not into travel. This wasn't kind of what we agreed on, and it always comes as a surprise that one can renegotiate. And I always say one has inner boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, what are red lines for you, and what you can be flexible on, and then to put that out there to your partner. And that way you deepen your connection. So we're hoping that will speak to some of the listeners. What other examples are we bringing in?
You're right that so much can change over the course of a long-term relationship, which is why I think it makes it so much harder maintaining long-term relationships. I've worked with couples where they're struggling because they're about to add a child or add a second child, or they're now empty nesters and they don't really know how to even do relationship without their kids kind of in the middle. Or retirement hits and they're like, do I even still like you enough to want to hang out with you all the time in this retired state? And yeah, people evolve, people change, and there's always so much work to do in this ever evolving complexity of long-term relationships. I love long-term relationships as opposed to just dating, and things like that. I love working with long-term relationships. There's so much complexity, but that's who this podcast is for. It's people with.
Sorry, it goes through the life cycle. And people are kind of surprised that every time there's a life cycle change, it's kind of like a crisis. And that's really what relationships are. How do we manage what comes at us?
And couples get stuck as they are trying to manage this life cycle because they get stuck in the same patterns, the same ineffective communication styles, ineffective conflict management patterns that they have. They just don't know better ways because we have not been given tools to navigate the complexity of long-term relationship and stay connected and keep it thriving. What are your thoughts on that?
This is for you. If you find yourselves having the same argument over and over again, I so often hear that in such a frustrated tone, but I'm always saying this to him, or I'm always telling her that, and it just doesn't seem to go in. So if that's you, this podcast is for you. It's also a place for better communication. And I know sometimes that can sound a little bit cliched, but especially in long-term relationships, we sometimes forget to be curious. We think we know what the other one's thinking. We think we can finish their sentences. And so conflicts can remain unresolved. Couples can feel unheard, unrecognized. And we promise in that area practical ways to improve understanding and emotional intimacy, and to kind of look at your partner with fresh eyes.
Yeah. And I like how you said practical ways. We do plan to not just talk about theories and concepts, but to really give you some practical tools from experts there and from the research, and just give you tools and strategies that you can use and start using right away to improve your relationship. Because like I said, we just aren't taught these tools. We're not taught them in our culture. We're not taught them in our homes. We don't witness healthy relationships growing up. And so we want to give you those tools so that you can start using them in your relationship.
And I love what you just said, that the reminder of we're not often given these tools. We know we get married or we go into a relationship, there's no manual to follow. And sometimes when we start these tools, they can kind of feel, people will say to me, but they feel so unnatural. And I'm like, yeah, well, how is natural working out for you? Why don't you just, are you open to trying this, to trying something different? If that's you, this is the place for you. This is the podcast for you.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in growing self-awareness, growing relationship skills, learning how to better connect in all your relationships, because these skills can apply to all relationships, not just your long-term partner. But if that's your area of interest, then we hope that this podcast will be beneficial to you.
Right.
And it's, yeah, and it's not, this is about how you show up in your relationship, building your own self-awareness. So this podcast is about you and what you are going to bring to your relationships.
Right. And we're hoping that it's a place of support and connection and community, because relationships really aren't meant to be figured out alone. And by listening, we're hoping that you will feel less alone. If you're listening, you've already invested some energy. You're already coming with some curious interest to maybe what could be different for me. Where can I have agency in my relationships? And everybody struggles. And it makes it so much easier if it's not alone and you're with community where you can feel safe and secure.
Yeah, and because it's a community, we want to hear from you. We want to connect with you. So we aren't just gonna. It's not just gonna be us. Our goal is to bring guests onto our podcast to talk about a lot of different relationship specific areas, a lot of different topics. So we're going to bring people on, but we also want to hear from you. We want this to be a community, and we want to talk about the things that matter to you. So we want you to ask questions. We want to have real dialogue and address the things that matter to you. So every episode will have dedicated space to answer your questions. We're going to include at the end how to email us, how to get a hold of us, how you can make comments live if you're watching this live. But our goal is to answer your questions and make this relatable to the things that you need as the listeners.
Absolutely. Should we share a little bit about what exactly RLT is and what it offers? And
yes, let's do that, because this is kind of the elements of education that we'll be bringing into this podcast is through this lens of RLT, or relational life therapy. So yeah.
That we both work with. So I think one of the most interesting things when I speak to couples, and I've only seen, and I would imagine you see many clients the same way as well, who are really good people, but who are struggling. Mm-hmm. And it's always a bit of news to them when I say, you're not my client. You're good people, but you've been caught in a I'm thinking of the English word, in a storm, if you like, that's creating the distance, not because you're not good people, because you are good people. So who becomes our client is actually the dance between them. When this happens, you get triggered. What do you do? How do you relate? And so it goes. What are the dance steps that you take in this relationship that get repeated again and again that make you feel distant?
I love that. It's so helpful to realize, like, I'm not necessarily the problem in the relationship, and my partner is not the problem. It's the patterns that we engage in that are the problems, or the dance. You can call it the dance. You can call it the patterns. It's the things that we are doing in reaction to each other. That's the problem. That's the thing that needs to change. And I think when you realize that that is the focus of relationship work, is what are the patterns? How are you contributing to those patterns? How is your partner contributing to those patterns? But when you focus on what are the patterns and how can we shift the patterns, it kind of takes away the blame and the feeling shameful, like, why can't I just do relationships? Oh, we're just stuck. It's the patterns that we engage in that are the problems. And speaking of patterns, Bev, where a huge part of RLT is where our patterns come from. What do you want to say about where our patterns come from?
Right. So our patterns in a one liner, and we really will go into all of this in much more depth, come from our families of origin, our early caregivers. We either model what we see. It's actually not we either model, we do both. We model some of the behaviors that we've seen, and we react to some of the behaviors that we've seen. And just on that point, I just want to underline that till about 12, children don't have any boundaries. So everything they see, everything they experience comes in. And they don't have the ability to say to their parents, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's right, because they might know any other way. So what actually happens is they fulfill their certain roles. Why? Because they need nurturance, connection, food, physical things need to be done for them. They need to be clothed. So they fall into patterns and habits that their parents are asking them. Just as an example of one, it could be, your dad, you get me so much better than your dad does. So then we have a surrogate parent. And a child is too young to take on the role of being a parent. And therefore, we observe and we absorb as young children, and then as adults we bring that into our adult relationships. We cobble it together, what we think an adult should be.
I think we underestimate how much of our relationships are happening on autopilot. These things that we've learned and absorbed in our early years that now are just autopilot of our brain, of this is how to connect, this is how to deal with frustration, this is how to deal with disappointment, and we bring all of that into our relationships. So it's such an important part of the work we're going to talk about, is where did these patterns come from? Because that's critical to understanding how you can shift it. So you were watching us on Bold Brave TV, and after the break, the 2-minute commercial break, we'll come back and talk more about all these relationship dynamics.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
It was almost instant. I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com. plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, Hope, and Support for Caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So, Suzette, our plan is that hopefully in the future, from future episodes, we'll be answering listener questions. But since this is our first episode, we decided to bring on some common questions that we hear in our clinics. Would you like to jump in with one?
Yeah, so one of the most common is what if my partner doesn't care about listening to these relationship podcasts or doesn't care about reading relationship books or resources? So what if it's just me? Can my relationship change? So what are your thoughts on that? Do you hear that frequently?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard it yet about the podcast, but I just want to say if it is about the podcast, for sure, it's valuable even if you're just listening. Because as we were speaking in the previous section about those steps, if you change your dance steps, if you gain anything from this podcast that helps you change in a positive way, your partner will be forced to change his steps or her steps to accommodate that change. So it's valuable even if your partner doesn't jump on with you. What else do you think? How would you answer that if someone says my partner doesn't want to listen?
Absolutely, because when you change your part of the pattern, it opens up opportunities. Otherwise, you're just locked into your same old dance steps. You do something different, then it's like, oh, there's all these you're opening up doors for something different to happen. So I completely agree that change starts with you. If you work on your part, I just want to say, like, my husband he does not care at all about any of these relationship books, podcasts. Like, all of my audiobooks I listen to, they're all like, self-help, development, and things like that. And he loves fantasy books, right? But that's okay, because if one person understands how to make healthy relationships and how to change their part, it almost just kind of like brings the other person along. It's an example. You're leading by example. You're opening up possibilities just by altering what you do. So I think I'm living proof that your husband doesn't, or spouse or wife or whoever partner doesn't have to be joining you as you are listening to these. It's great if they do, but it's okay if they don't. You can still do a lot of work on the relationship.
Absolutely. And the part I think you didn't say is that your husband might be doing a lot of the relational stuff pretty naturally and pretty well. Certainly well enough for you. So if you want to get your information from a more formal source, that's okay. Your husband doesn't live in a cave. He also lives in the world, in the marketplace. So he's learning, and that might be his style of learning. I know that from my own marriage, my husband is very political. He loves politics and he can get very worked up about politics. And I said to him, you know what, it's not an area that I don't take much interest in, but because it's of interest to him, I said, I'm happy to hear you. And I am interested when he tells me, but it has to be the tone that I could hear without all the, the worked up part. And I made a promise to him that I would listen if he sends me a podcast or a talk or a comment, because sometimes you get flooded with not only political posts or whatever. So if he sends me an article, because it's from him, I will generally commit to reading it or listening to it. And he will do the same for me. I don't think I flood him with that kind of information, but I might say, you know what, I've just heard a really great talk that I'd like you to listen to. It's just our way of filtering out all the noise from everybody else sending us things, and knowing that that's an area that's important for my partner, and can I take a little bit of an interest in that. So
Yeah,
I don't listen to podcasts on politics and that kind of thing, but I'm happy to take a little bit from him. Does that make sense?
yeah, and that's I think part of like being generous, which we'll talk a lot about, is
Right.
generosity and really showing that you value your partner. So, but yeah, it's
Right.
okay if your partner is not interested right now in reading all these things. Just do your part. Example, my husband is a great communicator because I've learned communication skills and I use them, and he's like, oh, that's effective and that feels good to be spoken to that way. So he like then reciprocates, right? So there's a lot of power in just in
Beautiful.
learning your own. So what other
A lot of
questions?
it is being relational.
Hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
another question that comes up, and in continuing with this theme, is why can't I just read a self-help book? Why do I actually need to come in? And it's a great question. Um, when we read a self-help book or listen to a book or whatever it is, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to get information in, but it's this communication and connection where we can see how we're showing up. We only know about ourselves through the responses and the reactions we get from outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And so, even though not everybody has to listen to this podcast or read every book, we want to impart the knowledge that we've invested in doing it that way, because that is what's worked for us.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to work for everyone in that same way.
Yep, I agree. I love that. What are some other frequently asked questions, common questions that you hear, Bev?
Another one is, and maybe you'd like to jump in with this. How do you know when enough is enough? Should I
Mm,
stay? Should I go?
yeah, that is such a big question, and I do see a lot of people who are really kind of like one foot in and one foot out, and I how do I know? And do I keep working? Have I put in too much work? Is anything ever going to change? It's a really complex question, and I think there's a couple areas to talk about with that. And one is something we call preconditions. There are some things that if they're happening, they need to be addressed before anything can change in the relationship. Things like addiction, things like abuse, violence, right? Like if those things are happening, those have to be addressed before you can even make a decision. Should I stay or should I go? Like it just, those things have to stop and be taken care of being and be treated. Untreated mental health issues, right? So assuming that those preconditions have kind of been worked on and there's no violence and addiction is being managed and dealt with and mental health issues are being managed and dealt with, then we can use a question called relational reckoning to decide, should I stay or should I go? And the relational question is there enough good? Am I getting enough good, healthy relationship, connection, love in this marriage or relationship? Is there enough good that I can grieve what I'm not getting and it will still be worth it? Because we're not going to have the fantasy relationship. You know, our spouse might not be exactly as loving, as caring, or, you know, as thoughtful as we want them to be. They may not connect in the ways that we want. Can we grieve that because there's still so much good in the relationship, and it'll out um, and kind of come out on top because there's enough good happening. What are your thoughts, or maybe you
I
can
love that you're highlighting that for many of us, we think that when we found our partners, we have actually found our knight in shining armor who will continue and complete us and continue the conversation we never completed with our families of origin. They're just going to get us. And that's what it feels like, right? Very often in the beginning stages of a relationship. And what actually happens is they take a burning hot spoke and know how to put it right into our eyeball. They know what our triggers are. And in I'm trying to think again of another English word. In the Gemara, just lost the English word for it. It's a Jewish source book. There's a beautiful description of, in order to make a diamond shine, you take another diamond, and the sound it makes is this awful sound as you polish a diamond, and that's what a relationship is. Sometimes makes that awful sound, and is it worth it at the end? And that is something that, as you say, your emotional relational reckoning question so beautifully answers, am I getting enough? Because I sometimes tell clients this, and they're kind of pretty surprised that my husband didn't get the perfect partner either, but I can hold myself in kind compassion for my flaws, even when I hang my head because I've done something really unkind, because I do that too. But can we come back into repair?
Yeah. And there's no, that might take some time and thought to even answer. Am I getting enough? Is there enough good? Because you really have to look at your partner. Like, are they meeting me halfway? Are they being collaborative? What kind of parent are they? What, are they generous? Are they caring and kind? Like, are they doing some of these really important things compared to what they're not doing? Am I getting enough here? And we all will have to grieve the ways that our spouses do not meet, or our partners do not meet our ideal. We're all going to have to grieve that. But if they're
Find other partners on the pickleball court. That's just the reality.
Yep. And it's hard. So I think that's a really important question to sit with. It's a very confronting question to really get honest with. But yeah, that's one of the most common questions that I get. Is our relationship done, or can we salvage it? And it's complicated. So you are watching us on Bold Brave TV, and we will be back after a 2-minute commercial break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hi, so we've actually been speaking for almost an hour, and we're going to wrap up. We want to leave you with a thought. It's a thought from Terry Real, and why this work is not just for you. So the quote is, family dysfunction goes from one generation to the other, like a fire in the woods, burning down everything that comes in its wake, till one person, and I call that person a relational hero, turns to face the flames. And in that moment, he spares the next generation and offers healing to the generation that came before. Powerful, right, Suzette?
It is. It is powerful. Just a reminder of the work that we're doing. This is about what we're giving to our future, to our next generation, to our kids, about how they do relationships, about how they connect with people, how they show up in the world.
Because so many clients come and say, when I say, is this the relationship you want to pass, you wish for your children? And generally, no, they want better. And we can stop the dysfunction that goes through. We all carry it. And it takes work. It really does. And it takes hard work. But
Well,
if you
and
find someone alongside you, they can help you do that. Sorry.
yeah, well, I was just thinking what most people do is just blame their partner. You're the reason that our relationship is dysfunctional, right? But this quote reminds us, like, you have to turn and face the flames of your own relational patterns that have been passed down from you. You have to stop those generational patterns and shift them and show up different in your relationship. This is not the work of your partner probably has a lot of their own work to do. They might definitely be a large part of the problem, right? But this is about facing the flames of what's been rolling from generation to generation. Like in my family, it's codependency. It's people pleasing. It's not speaking up. It's those are the things that I have to face to change my own patterns. What about you, Bev?
Yeah, I love that. I love that reminder that it's what do we have to change. So, for instance, for me, it can be anxious, obsessive kind of, I need to do something right now. And because my husband knows that, he'll sometimes say, okay, we need to do something right now in that kind of sarcastic tone. And it kind of jolts me awake and like, yeah, maybe it doesn't have to be right now. Just take a breath, take a pause, and just see if you can see the other side. And that's one thing we'll be speaking into, that as adults, we have choice. We really have choice. So should we hand out some homework? What do you think? A tool, a tip?
We do. We said we want to provide practical tools and tips to help you. So one thing you can do starting today is really figure out your why. What is your motivation for facing your own pattern, changing your own part, facing your own flames, that have been passed down from generations? What's your motivation? So write down your why. It might be for your kids. Like, I don't want to pass this on to my kids. I want my kids to witness a healthy relationship. It might be like, I want to feel better in my relationship. It's good for me to be in a healthy relationship. So it's worth doing the hard work. So I want you to just figure out your why, not your partner's why, but your why for wanting to do the hard work to change your patterns. And we're going to, of course, talk more about how to identify your own patterns and what those patterns are. But so your takeaway for today is find your why, write it down. What's your motivation for doing your part of changing your relationships?
And it might not always just be positive. It might be negative. I want to stop this misery.
Because it can be miserable to live the way people live in relationships. Sometimes I'm like, man, how do you guys live day to day like this with certain couples? But
and by answering this question, you'll also see a bigger picture, that our relationships are kind of like the house we live in. It's our biosphere. It's the air we breathe. We're not above it. We're in it. We depend on our relationship, and the relationship depends on us. So if you think of it like your house, all bad words, shouting, screaming, fighting is almost like throwing garbage into the living room. And when the living room fills up, where do you go? Oh, so you need to go to the bedrooms. When those fill up with garbage, you're really getting further and further away. So think about that. Why would I want to invest in this work?
Absolutely, because that's got to be the thing that carries you through the difficult work. So, well, let's talk about where people can find us if they want to learn more just individually before we end. So I know this will all be in the show notes, but I'm on social media on Instagram as Suzette Halterman, and my website, Suzette Halterman Coaching. What about you, Bev? Where can people find you individually?
Yeah, I have I have a website, Bev Ehrlich, bev.co.il, very easy. Facebook, YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. And of course, to reach both Suzette and I together, you can reach us at the email twocouplescoaches@gmail.com. That's everything spelled out, TWOCOUPLES, coaches@gmail.com. Any last before we go?
No, just if you ever have asked yourself, how do we make this relationship stronger, healthier, more fulfilling, then this podcast is for you, and we hope you'll tune in. If you watch it live, you can through Bold Brave TV on their YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, you can watch it live, and you can write comments. We're going to be here every Wednesday at 12 Eastern time, so you can put comments or questions live, and we will get those and we can address them. So again, we want it to be a conversation. So thank you so much for joining us today on Two Couples Coaches here on Bold Brave TV. Again, we're live every Wednesday at 12 Eastern time. And then you can find us on all the major video and podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those places. So any closing thoughts, Bev?
Yeah, it's been so lovely that you've been with us today. And I've enjoyed this tremendously, Suzette. Thank you so much. And what I always leave my clients with, and I leave you guys with, be kind to ourselves and be kind to each other. And we'd love you to join us next week.
Thank you.
This has been Two Couples Coaches with your hosts, Bev and Suzette. Tune in each week as Bev and Suzette share expert insights, have heart-to-heart conversations with guests, answer listener questions, and dive into the challenges and joys of building a life together. Because in relationships, just like in life, growth happens when you show up, stay curious, and keep evolving together. Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.